Monday, March 16th, 2026. Our first item today is a presentation from Pitkin County on the Age-Friendly Community Initiative. So please introduce yourselves for the viewing public and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us today. Appreciate you. I'm Lindsay Maish. I'm the Director of Human Services at Pitkin County. I'll let Emily introduce herself.
I'm Emily Langford. I'm the Pitkin County Senior Services Supervisor.
And Dr. Chad Fedorowitz is stuck in Wisconsin with 3 feet of snow outside of his house, so he was unable to make it back today. So we're going to do our best in presenting this plan. Chad is certainly the expert. We've been supporting the entire process, so we hope we can do it some justice today, but please have grace with us. We're asking. Okay, so first let's just do a little history of the Age-Friendly Initiative. This all began back in 2014 when we started the Aging Well Community Planning Initiative. It wasn't until 2017, so for 3 years we did planning, and in 2017 Pitkin County became the 149th age-friendly community of 1,008 in the nation, 5th in Colorado, of 26 in Colorado, and the second on the western slope. I believe Fruita was the first one on the western slope. In 2019, 2020, we restructured the Aging Well Plan to include the American Association of Retired Persons' 8 domains of livability, which really drove a lot of the strategy of the plan. And in 2025, we updated the initiative. That was last year. And now it's called the Age-Friendly Initiative moving forward. So we just keep evolving with this plan, and we'll keep going. So the vision of this plan now, we have a new 5-year plan, 2026 to 2030, which is it's really meant to be the North Star. It's a strategy for all of us. And the goal is to ensure residents can age safely, remain connected, and continue contributing to the community. The way that we do this is by getting lots of public input. We do needs and opportunities. We align those things with other surveys like our comp plan and other things happening, housing plans, things like that in the area. And then, of course, we partner with local and regional organizations. We partner internally at Pitkin County with different departments, as well with different municipalities, and in other ways with other partners as well, like RAFTA and school districts and things like that. Supporting aging in place throughout the life course. So really, the ability to live in one's own home in our community safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level, of course applies to older adults, but it also applies in terms of any type of accessibility for any person. So it can span the entire age range from 0 to as old as you want to talk about, right? Though this plan obviously focuses on those that are 60 and older, a lot of the aspects of this plan can support anyone that has any sort of access or functional need. So you'll see things in here like, right, to improve sidewalks or transportation, right, have more transportation options. That doesn't just benefit those that are 60 and older, that benefits our entire community. So it does fit really nicely into our comp plan as a county, but also fits really nicely into some of our housing plans and some of the other things. So part of this plan is just to ensure that we're collaborating and working together on this North Star of being able to age well in the community. So this graph just gives you a really we have a steady increase of those who age in place here in Pitkin County. So you can see that it's pretty steady. I think it was around 4,800 people, is that right? That we currently have, which ends up being around a quarter of our population in Pitkin County that are aging in place. So it's increasing. We are seeing more people. We're definitely feeling that in the senior center. Our numbers are going up around we now serve lunch 5 days a week. Food security continues to be something that we are attending to and seeing for those who are living on a fixed income in our community. All right, I'm going to hand it over now to the expert on the key focus areas to talk about in the 8 domains.
Hi. So as you can see kind of in the different bubbles are the different 8 domains. So there's a lot of goals kind of that are all listed out in the memo, but I'll kind of touch on each one and just summarize some of the areas just to kind of wrap your heads around what each of these areas might look at. Starting with health and community services, this could look like expanding access to legal aid, caregiver resources, health screenings, and financial planning workshops, communication and information, looking at creating a centralized hub for programs and expanding digital literacy support. Civic participation and employment, more opportunities for volunteering, part-time work, and civic participation. Respect and social inclusion, continuing to kind of address ageism, strengthen intergenerational programs, and expand inclusive outreach. Social participation includes increasing social, educational, recreational programming for older adults, and we do that in a lot of different ways at the Senior Center. Housing, supporting that aging in place through things like home modifications, shared housing models, and affordable senior housing, which is obviously a challenge. Transportation, expanding senior transportation options, as well as volunteer driver programs. And then outdoor spaces and buildings, improving accessibility for all, as Lindsay mentioned, things like parks, trails, sidewalks, public buildings, all that. So solutions and opportunities. These are really the ways that we want to approach this work. Being able to collaborate with community partners, advocating for accessibility and any policy changes that might be needed, continuing to outreach partners and community members for feedback, and empowering the community to keep these ideas in mind with any new projects. And as I said, the memo goes into details for each of the domains. We don't actually expect the plan to be completed at the end of the 5 years. It's more of a roadmap to kind of help us move in the right direction and how we can apply that age-friendly perspective to things moving forward. So some next steps. Pitkin County Senior Services, Chad, will be presenting this plan to all the municipalities in Pitkin County over the next few months. And our goal for that, we really hope to gather input to help inform all the action steps and who and how we can partner with along the way, so we can work to prioritize to implement those steps. And then we do hope to provide like an annual report with the progress made each year as we work through things.
Okay, discussion. So this is the part where we're going to ask for some input. You may have questions about the plan. We can start there, but we did include some prompts just about what's happening at the City of Aspen. Are there any current initiatives that we should have awareness of, that we should be at the table for these kinds of discussions, as well as how can the City of Aspen's strategic initiatives support this plan, if at all?
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. I did look through the memo. It's very thorough and covered a lot of areas. I have a few thoughts off the top of my head, if give others time to think about things. Our council member Guth apologized he had to be traveling today and could not be here. In particular, I think improving the lines of communication between the senior center, perhaps, and the city of Aspen in terms of the outreach and community gathering that happens at Red Brick Center for the Arts openings type of things, and making sure people are aware of, say, the Wheeler Insider program to get the more discounted tickets for shows at the Wheeler Opera House. And right now they're doing a really great special. Your first 2 tickets to Wheeler Insider shows are only $25. But again, I was just thinking, mostly we do have a certain number of ongoing great activities for young and old alike, and making sure we're part of your newsletter and that information is shared, I think would make a lot of difference. I think that there is an issue that's kind of brewing out there a little bit. It's maybe not prominent, but for some people it feels prominent. And that has been the question about, are you able to retire in your APSHA unit? And of course, the answer right now is yes. If you've qualified and fulfilled your work commitments to community, yes. But we get letters from people who are worried that what if the regulations change? And so right now, that right to retire in your unit is not really in your deed restriction, it's in the county regulations. And I don't think the APSHA board has shown any interest in bringing that up and telling people they have to sell and move their other units or making that a requirement for new purchases. But it is a topic we hear about a lot, that can we create more movement in the system by telling people they have to sell a unit within 1 year of retiring or not? And it's just a kind of a conversation that when we're talking about aging well and pace, I think we're talking about the whole community, not just those who live in the free market units. So I think that that's an issue that's worth keeping your eye on. I have called for a retreat or mini retreat with Pitkin County and others involved, APSHA board obviously, to talk about some of those regulations and problems that we have with a 50-year-old program. That might be one topic that comes up in that. The other item I would bring up is to be aware of, and I like to spread this awareness to everyone who's here today too. There's a ballot initiative out there right now that's gathering signatures. It's ballot initiative 175, and it aims to take 2/3 of all the sales tax revenue out of the state budget and general fund budget and put it into highway user trust funds for road and bridges only. And they mean road and bridges only, no mobility, no park and ride, no developing those sort of components to, or funding them to go along with the roadways. It specifically would defund mobility and transit choices. And I think that that's a very important element for seniors and our community with RAFTA funding. They don't fund operations, but they do grants periodically for bus replacement. I'm not sure how the money flows to county travelers or not, if that's federal monies, that this would not be affected, or if there is some state money involved. But pedestrian safety programs go away, electric vehicle charging stations go away, almost anything connected with mobility goes away. And given that a lot of seniors don't drive, or that the extra cost of driving at that point in life is too much, I think it's worth really keeping your eyes on this. They need to gather signatures in all congressional districts for it to be on the ballot in November. But it would go into the state constitution, so they need 55% of the vote to pass. But you don't budget your state in the state constitution, unfortunately. And it's kind of, the other thing that it potentially affects is Medicaid reimbursements to rural hospitals would be reduced out of the state general fund. And I know some patients are potentially dual qualified with both Medicaid and Medicare.
Yep.
Or Medicaid before they've qualified for Medicare.
Right.
So I think watching out for funding cuts in those programs via this ballot measure, I'm urging people to decline to sign if they're approached. So those are the three items I would like to put out there as things for us to consider networking and working better on, and then other council members' comments or ideas. John?
Yeah, wanted to add to your comment about aging in place in APSHA.
Yeah.
Because that does come up on a regular basis of, there is an issue. Our system is, a large percentage of people are over 55 and over 65 that are in our units.
And many still working.
And
but
many are still working. And again, it's come up It comes up consistently every couple months. But we have also consistently said that we're not interested in forcing anybody to leave APSHA housing because the people who are retired in APSHA housing are, for the most part, people who devoted their whole lives to working and living in Aspen and raising their family. And that would be a slap in the face to them.
Yeah.
So Rachel did touch on the fact that we are looking at changing deed restrictions as time goes on to try and address that fact. The other thing I wanted to mention was transportation issues in aging in place. I've heard this several times that Redstone, and I'm glad that was focused on here about making places better lit, specifically in Redstone. It's been mentioned to me by several members of the Crystal River Valley and Redstone that they would really appreciate a circulating bus, at least in the mornings and evenings, and possibly at some point in the future, a dedicated bus route from Redstone down to Carbondale, so people that work in Redstone and the Crystal River Valley can also access public transportation to Aspen.
Yeah,
That's all I have.
it's a missing link, for sure.
And I realize there's, RAFTA's ridership is down, and in order to do that, we'll probably have to hire another FTE or two and so on. But it
More about
is,
the budgets than the hiring, but they're both connected.
yeah, everything's connected, but this is something we need to think about going forward.
I'd agree.
More people are moving to Redstone. It seems like there's more and more of our county living
Moving
there,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like our workforce county living there. Yep. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Sam, you ready?
Mine are pretty general because I do think a lot of the strategic initiatives that we at the city take do directly benefit a lot of our elder citizens. I think we look towards just treating everyone with dignity and respect. We work on things like affordability and accessibility, and especially for elder citizens, I think we work pretty hard towards peace of mind, that they know that they can stay in place, and just maintaining community character so Aspen stays a place that they can recognize in so many facets of life. I know between adding things like stereotyping pickleball courts and parking downtown, like close to where people live, and trying to think about our community from everyone's lens, and that not everyone has the same mobility and accessibility. I do think we do a lot towards these goals, and I would, after spending some time up at the Pitkin County Senior Services Center, I do think this is actually a real bright spot in this community. And I know also that our older citizens are actually probably some of the most involved, especially in voting and having their opinions heard. And for that, I feel like we're here to continue to support. So I don't necessarily have anything specific other than saying we're here to keep it moving in the right direction and celebrating this win, hopefully. And if someone doesn't like that, they're going to write in and let us know, and we'll work on it. So,
Yeah. Very good. True. And actually, you reminded me of something that might be helpful, and that is to make sure people who have a phone, a smartphone, can have downloaded the Downtowner app, so they're able to access the mobility in town without using their car from place to place, or leave their car in the garage and still be shuttled around the perimeter of town, things like that.
and sorry, and you remind me like Aspen 311 and what a tool that is. So if there's anyone that's technologically challenged, young or old, making sure that there's a version of that where people can
Just call in.
Yeah, let their complaints be known.
Yeah.
Nice.
I have a question and then just a couple thoughts. You conducted some surveys. Is there any sort of baseline or general stat on how well we're doing in this area already, like a general feeling of how effective our senior services are in the community?
So this all started in 2017, and it has evolved into the 8 domains. I believe we have some baseline data on the 8 domains from the last one. Is it not in the memo? I didn't write the
Didn't see
memo,
it,
so
but
I didn't. Yeah.
I didn't. I could have completely
And if
missed it,
not,
too.
what I can do is take that back and see if we can't find some of that, just to see kind of the progression. Yep, and expansion. We do have a lot of nutrition data, because it's such a kind of core piece of what senior services does. We're also looking in our department, we've just done some expansion by moving like adult protection under senior services, because around like 85 to 90% of our clients who are involved were 60 plus. And we now have veteran services over there. So it's kind of expanding into age, like adult and aging services. So in this plan, I'm guessing we have some baseline data that I can bring to you to show you kind of where we fit in, but to also remember that this is a North Star and we're just one piece of it. Like, we're just a spoke of this, and then leading, right, to make sure we're sitting at the table in a lot of those areas. So subject matter experts, so to speak, but our programming is for around the social isolation, nutrition, health, things like that, and some of the other stuff we end up partnering a lot with others, like Public Works, right? Our infrastructure, a lot of the infrastructure stuff doesn't fall into our domain as much because we're so programmatic.
Okay, thanks. And thanks for being proactive and starting this almost a decade ago. And then the two thoughts, I've been serving on the Library Advisory Committee for the strategic plan, and part of that is more outreach, engaging, and becoming even a more vital community space. So I'm sure it's on your radar, but if it's not there, this seems ripe for collaboration there. And then a long-term seed that I know has come up from various members of the community and even at this council table is senior dedicated or senior-specific housing as a built project in the future. And I would continue to plant that seed.
We try to insert ourselves in all of those discussions as much as possible, yeah.
I think that's a great comment. Often the words a move to housing, that people would really desire to move to, not, as opposed to, we want you to move out. It's like, here's some great places and that offer the security and affordability, and then the proximity that people are looking for. So seeing in your report the mention of a new appropriately sized senior center, that would be a big ticket item. And maybe a further discussion is that you're thinking adding on at the same location? You're thinking that you need a new location? Are you thinking about it at all? So we'd love to hear more about that. John?
I actually would be remiss if I didn't mention that my mom aged in place here in the county, and the county was really above and beyond. They helped fall-proof her house. She fell over, and the county came in and made some changes so that she fell over again. She wouldn't do more damage than was necessary. The Meals on Wheels program was a lifesaver for me and my sisters. So I just want to thank everybody at the county for this program, because I think it really makes a huge impact.
They're pretty stellar. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you. I think that might be all from us, but thank you again so much. And we're going to hear a big fire, emergency evacuation, everything like that presentation next, if you want to stick around to hear how we're going to get the seniors moved out when that happens. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you all.
Okay, we can have whoever's leading off on this, all come on up to the table. We really appreciate you being here. And let's see, how are we titling this one? We are now going to be moving into the fire presentation, and how we do not have a packet on this, but wildfire preparedness.
Just give me 1 second also to make sure I'm set up. I'm going to present my screen. Yeah. All right, well, he's getting me set up with technology here. I'm Chris Breitbach. I'm the emergency manager for Pitkin County.
I'm Erin Walter. I am the service hydrologist of Grand Junction's National Weather Service.
What was your name again?
Erin Walter.
Okay, thank you, Erin.
And I'm Erin Lofton-Malconi, Utilities Director. I'll lightly set the stage because you're going to see a rotating cast of characters. So tonight's presentation is kind of a presentation on the drought conditions and how it relates to not only source water impacts and the meteorological outlook, but also emergency preparedness for the fire season that we're coming up into. And so we have experts from a number of different local and state agencies that are either here present or will be joining by phone to give a presentation from their respective area of expertise. And so to have us kicking it off will be Erin Walter with the National Weather Service, and then we'll kind of go along the way. You're welcome to ask questions.
And as we've all seen, it's fire season started a little early in Nebraska.
Yes.
Yes.
This weekend,
Yeah.
there's some state and federal partners here that maybe can talk about some of the resources that were sent.
Yeah. And so I think since you will hear, different components of how the drought relates to all these different agencies and the partnerships, feel free to ask questions throughout the different presentations instead of, no need to hold them all to the end.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so with that, I'll leave it to Chris and Erin once we get the Zoom presentation sorted, and then we'll come back up.
It's not letting me do it through the website.
Okay.
Never answered that before. Screen share. I'm not full screen this slideshow.
Fantastic. All right. Like Erin mentioned, Erin number 2, we're first going to get an update from the National Weather Service from Erin Walters, and then we'll come back and talk about some of the utilities things with the city. And then we'll start at the federal level and work our way down to the local level and give you some updates on our mitigation plans, our preparedness, our operational readiness. And like she said, if there's any questions, this will be a little bit lengthy, but we don't want you to hold questions. Just fire them at us at any time. We'll get the right subject matter expert up here to help answer those questions for you.
Well, we really appreciate all of you being here today, and we wanted this film for Grassroots because we know the public has a lot of questions as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, thank you.
Erin?
All right, I wanted to start with an overview of where we're at right now, so just current drought conditions. These are issued every Wednesday or available Thursday each week, so a couple days old, but essentially there's not much of a change over the winter. We've just had kind of a lackluster winter, and even going into this season, we had D4 extreme or exceptional drought over Pitkin County, and it has been here to stay all winter long. So if we move to the next slide, I think that shows a good example as to why. So these are graphics that show 5 months, basically the water year. So we're looking at October through February's temperature across the state of Colorado on the left, and then precipitation as a rank on the right. So essentially, this has been one of the warmest on record winters for the state of Colorado. In some areas, the mountain peaks and the higher elevation has stayed a little bit closer to normal, but still that shading is around the 10th to 20th warmest on record. So this is going back with 131 years of record from the Colorado climatologists. And same with precipitation, that we've seen some of the driest on record as well. Next slide. So kind of honing in, we'll start with Colorado River Basin and then truncate even shorter. But SNOTEL sites are used to make these graphics for our snow water equivalency, or how much water we have in our mountain snowpack. Those sites came online about in the late 80s. So as you can see on this graphic, 2026 is the black line at the very bottom. We have exceeded the lowest SWE content on record since the late 80s in the upper Colorado River Basin, and we're sitting at 65% of that median value. In addition to that, even zoning into the Roaring Fork Basin on its own, again, record lowest since the late 80s. So kind of the message that we've been saying this year across the state of Colorado is that this is the worst snowpack we've had in over 40 years. There's some historical data that has shown that like 1981 or 1977 was worse. However, since the early 80s, this is the worst snowpack we've had on record. And then in a more graphical depiction, we have the modeled snow water equivalent from the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center. They like to model our snowpack in terms of how much water supply we have for our water resources, and then trying to time our peak in the timing and peak of our rivers, so following runoff season. But essentially, over a good chunk of Pitkin County, we have 0 to 30% of that median SWE with our higher elevations, and a 30 to 50, or at best 50 to 70%. And then this is just one more showing kind of those records that I was talking about from NRCS with some of those snow tell sites that we used to come up with the aerial extent that we saw in the last picture. There are a number of sites surrounding Pitkin County with the lowest on record. I was grabbing some sites just for like clarification. I think that's Independence Pass says the worst on record, and then several sites are their second lowest on record. So just kind of the pinpoint of where those are. Of course, when we look at our spring temperatures and weather, that can be a big factor in how our snow melts and how quickly. However, when we look at our seasonal outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, we still have a higher percentage or probability of above normal temperatures for a good chunk of western Colorado. The highest confidence, again, is over the desert Southwest, but still seeing over 40% probability of above normal temperatures for the spring through the end of May, and then also leaning below normal precipitation as well. And I do want to point out, too, for western Colorado, at Pitkin County specifically, we do see a lot of our precipitation over the year in the month of April. So seeing a decline in that percent of normal is still a little nerve-wracking, even leading into our spring when we're starting off our snowmelt season on a bad foot. And then just another graphic here showing that the drought outlook has continued to persist. And I'll end it with one more slide, I believe, with our fire weather concerns to kind of segue into our fire experts. There's some predictions for significant wildland fire potential, and by June timeframe, we see an expansion of that above normal or higher potential in western Colorado start to creep back up. So
Yeah. I see us down there on that June map, not looking too good.
yeah, so we are expecting that to transition earlier than normal, and with our dry conditions spreading into western Colorado by June.
Thank you. Any questions for Aaron at all?
Well, just a comment as much as anything. I was involved in water discussions for quite a while, and we were always talking about getting more mid-elevation snow tell sites or things like that, because that's never really been traditionally measured, and the mid-elevations are totally barren. I think that that's really problematic, and I recall a number of years ago listening to a roundtable basin talking about Blue Mesa Reservoir, and they were so excited they had such a great snowpack, but then it sublimated and just turned away as a gas vapor, and they ended up 30% below normal fill. And no one had expected that this water could just disappear into the air instead of running off.
Honestly, that's my big concern with this week, with temperatures rising so high. We are so dry that I don't think it's as likely for our snowpack to melt as runoff, and probably a higher percentage of that will be sublimation.
So very concerned about that. And then, I don't know, just a random question. Is the National Weather Service starting to look towards LiDAR measurements of snowpack and things like this? I know
Yeah.
our valley was a little bit of an experiment for that, gets a little more accurate.
So the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center, they're housed in Salt Lake City, and they are the ones that are modeling our snowpack to try to predict runoff and how much water is available for water use. And they've started to incorporate that in their snow model to improve how they're actually accounting for what is out there. Because sometimes they have to play catch up if the runoff is too fast or too high. They realize they weren't accurately modeling what was at the higher elevations.
John?
I've been following airborne snow observatories. Sorry. I'm following airborne snow observatories. They've been doing aerial surveys twice a year for the last several years. Are they on schedule to do that again this spring, or do we know?
Yes.
Excellent.
That's John will talk to.
Okay, we'll hear more about that later.
Great,
And,
thanks.
thank you. Thank you again for being here. We really appreciate this, and you're reaching a bigger audience than just in the room. Thank you.
Thanks. Aaron?
So I'm going to steal the presenting from you.
Hi, Steve. Hi, John.
Okay. All right. Well, good evening. As I said, I'm Erin Laughlin-Malaconi. I have with me tonight Steve Hunter, one of the special projects managers in the Utilities Department, and we're going to give kind of the Utilities Department take on what the drought conditions mean for our water supply and demand for this season. I just wanted to start off by kind of reminding where we are today as far as drought status. We remain in stage 2 drought declaration, which was enacted and made effective in September of 2025. Kind of highlighted there in the table of what our targeted reduction goals are in a stage 2. And on the screen, you kind of see the reminders of the enforcement measures that we're expecting all of our customers to follow, recognizing right now is not irrigation season, but we are quickly coming upon it. And
Did we hit the goals via?
system-wide, I would say system-wide, we did not see a system-wide reduction of 10 to 15% once stage 2 was enacted. As far as some city-specific facilities that we were tracking and some of our top 10% water consumers, we did, between stage 1 and 2, for the top 10% water consumers, see a number of those repeat customers make reductions in that 10 to 20%. We also had city facilities, I'll mention later on, that achieved more than that outdoor reduction goal, which I think kind of indicates it is possible and certainly very achievable for more of our residences that are probably exceptionally overwatering their landscaped areas.
Okay.
But no, we have not yet achieved a system-wide reduction that we're seeking.
No, it's good to know. We got to track the results. Thank you.
Yep. And at a high level, wanted to touch on where our sources feed the system's demand. So we have source water out of Maroon Creek and in Castle Creek. They have about 3 to 4 miles of raw water piping from the intake at the head gate for each before it gets to the water plant for treatment. And we have very little, as little as 8 to 12 hours of storage at the reservoir at the water plant campus during peak summer irrigation season based on customer demand. And that's relatively due to the fact that we are kind of run of the river without having separate raw water storage. And so the flows that come out of Maroon and Castle go into the Leonard Thomas Reservoir, and then from there we treat based on customer demand. But it doesn't really allow for a controlled release of stored water to meet our customer demands. And Steve is going to touch on some of the specific drought condition impacts to those sources.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So Aaron Walter did a great job kind of showing us where we are in drought and wildfire. I think everybody's got a good feel because most of us are skiers and can see it on a daily basis. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing here, specifically in Castle and Maroon Creek, which are our water sources. Next slide. So I'm going to hit on reservoirs, which you're seeing in the upper Colorado, and why does that matter to us? Well, the city owns and operates two hydroelectric facilities, one on Maroon Creek and one at the bottom of Root Eye Reservoir. And that is a portion of our 100% renewable energy portfolio. As is several, we get what is called WAPA, Western Area Power Authority, so we get resources from other reservoirs around the country for that. In these droughts, what happens is we see a dramatic reduction in hydroelectric production, which affects the city because we're buying additional green energy resources, usually at a much higher cost. So we'll see that. We'll look to wind, solar. The other thing is this year, many of you may remember 21 and 22, the USBR this year, again, is highly likely to make releases from large reservoirs up here, such as Flaming Gorge, Blue Mesa, to meet minimum energy or power supply at Lake Powell. So that all affects us in one way or another. So just wanted to talk about that. Tim Miller, USBR, who kind of does everything for us at Root Eye, just issued, some of you may have seen it, reclamation for the inflows at Root Eye. It's the worst they've seen in decades. So not expected to fill this year. So that's going to be another impact on one of the city's facilities. So just wanted to touch on that real quick. Touching on stream flows real quick. Aaron Walter mentioned CBRFC. This is a product from them as well. And I'll talk here in a second on the airborne snow and how that moves in with what we're doing here locally. The big thing from here, you can see a lot of red, a lot of maroon, which is not good. This is their forecast for April through July for this year. And if you look on that right table about halfway down, you'll see the Roaring Fork at Glenwood Springs. And this is the KFF, or thousands of acre feet. And basically we're looking, yeah, perfect, Rachel. We're looking at seeing, or they're predicting 54% of annual runoff based on decades of stream flow measurements. And not much better if you look at the Colorado River at Cameo, 51%. So those are just some takeaways that it's regional, it's local, it's going to affect us all. Not just in recreation, but agriculture, power, you name it, and wildfire. So this has got, I'm going to talk, this has got, one of the graphics has disappeared. I don't know if, there, magically appeared. Yeah, sublimated. Exactly. So just to kind of touch on what we're doing here locally. So we've started a pretty rigorous, in the years I've been here, hydrologic monitoring and measurement program, specifically in Castle and Maroon Creek. So the graphic on the left, or the picture on the left, excuse me, is the brand new Castle Peak Snowtail site that we took many years getting it in, but it is in. It's the second successful year of operation, and it's not at its lowest because it's only had 2 years of, well, maybe. We don't know yet. So we have that up. So that's an additional Snowtail station. We had previously used Independence and Schofield and then kind of interpolated in between. And now we have this one that is in Castle Creek Basin up on Schofield, or Pearl Pass Road, and gives us real data for our main water supply for the town. We also participate and have since its beginning the CASM program, which is Colorado Airborne Snow Program. So we are a member of that. I was in the CASM meeting today to kind of answer your question, Councilman Doyle. We are going to start flying. We have flown for the last several years 2 flights, and we try to hit peak SWE, snow water equivalent, for the Roaring Fork, Upper Roaring Fork. It's traditionally the first or second week of April. Peak SWE is already probably passed this year. So everybody, not just us, is trying to play catch up with these flights. And then our second flight is usually later in May when the snowpack becomes isothermal or ripened, and when it's 0 degrees Celsius and it's melting out actively. That is also going to be shifted dramatically up. We are looking at getting our first flight in the air as early as a week from today, pending weather and other flights that are in. They're starting to fly the Uncompahgre, the Conejos, the Blue this week. So air flights are starting today. They just finished flying California, and now they're starting on Colorado. So that'll give us, so for those who don't know, we've been flying, and that gives us in thousands of acre feet a number. So instead of having we have 17 inches of SWE at X snowtail site, this gives us, we have real-time hydrologic models, both by CBRFC and with WRF Hydro through the ASO program, and we have 2 points that you can see in those graphics that are at the actual intakes for both Castle Creek and Maroon Creek. So we know exactly how much is up there. The other picture, top center with the ruler, is a picture I took 2 years ago up at the water plant, which shows dust layer. So dust on snow is another big one. And with this LiDAR technology, they also have an albedo product, which measures that dust. We can put that into the hydrologic model. 2 years ago, we melted out about 2 weeks early due to dust events. This year, date and time, we have not seen any significant dust on snow events, which is good, but we haven't. Aaron could tell you there's been no storms coming out of the southwest that generally bring us the dust. 90% of our dust, 99% of our dust comes from the Four Corners, Colorado Plateau area. Storms right now, the wind's coming out of the north. So, there hasn't been, and the dust months are March, April, May. Still a player. Lastly, I'll touch on the USGS. We've had a collaboration with them for years on stream gauges. Currently, the city's involved with 2 stream gauges with the GS. One is on Maroon Creek, where we have our hydroelectric. The second is on Roaring Fork below Maroon Creek. One of our other things we're excited to mention to you guys is we are going to have a new stream gauge on Castle Creek as early as this spring, hopefully April or May, before what little runoff there will be. Just to better quantify what we have. It's really hard to manage what you don't know, unless you know what you have to manage. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good.
And I wanted to take this opportunity to remind council, it's probably not new information, but the customer service area for the water system extends beyond the city of Aspen limits. And so decisions that are made at the council table when it relates to water conservation impact some of the surrounding Pitkin County area who are city of Aspen municipal water customers. And it's, historically we know in the summer is when we see the peak usage largely driven by outdoor use. Heads and beds is a driver as well. We do see a peak in the winter, but that peak, even when all the hotels are at full occupancy, is about 50% or less of what we'll see once people start watering their lawns. And so we know that summer is when we need people to be most responsive to conservation measures. And we have a variety of different types of customers, from residential and commercial downtown to affordable housing units and multifamily, and also some luxury neighborhoods. And so when we come to council with recommendations for water conservation and enforcement measures, it's intended for all of our customers to take those conservation actions equally. And we really do need everyone to be on the same page and in the same boat to have an effect on overall usage. And I wanted to also here to kind of talk about the role of a municipal water system, because I think that in times like these, it's a good reminder that there's a lot of different straws in the bucket of the municipal water pool, and there is a hierarchy of uses that we do get back to reminding folks of when conditions like drought necessitate kind of peeling back some of those uses. So primary driver is for health and safety, for drinking water and sanitation, and ensuring that the system and tanks have the adequate pressure and storage to support those uses, and hydrant pressure for structural firefighting. Once those uses are taken care of, we then focus on protection of the natural environment. And when we say that, we mean monitoring and protecting to the limits that we can in-stream flow. The rivers that the water department monitors for in-stream flow are Maroon Creek and Castle Creek primarily at our intakes. And so we're pretty cognizant of this year, might be different than the past, where we haven't been concerned with meeting the in-stream flow requirements that we are holding ourselves to and meeting system demand. After those 2 primary, secondary buckets are filled, then water usage can be prioritized for recreation in public spaces and public parks. And that just means irrigating those spaces for public enjoyment and safety. You don't see on this list, and this isn't exhaustive, it's just the primary drivers in the hierarchy. You don't see on here wildfire suppression, and that is intentional. No municipal water system is designed or has the capacity to fight wildfires, and we have a lot of people in the room and on the phone who can really get into the context there. But we have gotten some questions recently, and I think it's just timely and on people's minds about, installing some exterior wildfire suppression systems on their homes. And, those aren't permitted in our system, and it's primarily for the reasons you see above, that it would pose a risk of overwhelming the system for the primary functions it's intended for. But I know you're going to get a lot more information on how customers can best prepare themselves for wildfire at the residences when our partners at the fire department.
I'm
Share
just
as well.
thinking, landscaping and irrigation is the #1 use in the summer, but it's nowhere on your primary, secondary, and tertiary list. I kind of wondering where it fits in.
In the hierarchy of uses, it's in between the primary and secondary as I'm missing the exact term for it, but a non-sanitary use of potable water in a home or a commercial space would be some of that irrigation. However, the irrigation of residential properties is lower priority than irrigating more public amenity spaces when we are in a more dire drought condition.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of wondering, because I think if we all want water in our sinks this summer, we may need to really say very limited, if not no, watering this summer. I worked with Steve Child on the county commission, and we're talking about the larger state of Colorado water issues, of course. And he said, I grew up in Denver, and I remember all the grass turned yellow in July, and that was it. We didn't have outdoor irrigation to try to pretend we lived down in Kentucky or something. And we may have to see what we really have, but we need to have that water available for the primary uses. John?
Yeah. This just reminds me of what we were told after that Snowmass Village apartment fire, that the amount of water that was used to put that fire out was a very large amount, and I think we were told that if they had 4 buildings that same size or something like that, that they would have enough water to put out 4. If there were 5 buildings on fire, they would run out of water. So it was something like that, don't quote me, but
Yeah.
It was highly concerning. It showed that, with the water storage we have, we're not really ready for a large-scale fire.
No. True.
God forbid we have one.
I'll just point out that's not unique to Snowmass or Aspen. That's how water systems are designed across the United States and the world. Sizing storage larger than that would defeat our primary purposes in the water system. It would make water unsanitary for potable consumption. So that's kind of the balance you're trying to achieve. Additionally, here in the arid West, we just don't have the supply to take more water for extraneous uses.
Thanks for that, Tyler. Appreciate it.
I think other people will answer this question later. It's just to throw it out there. But you have heard of dry places putting up these water towers in neighborhoods, and it's not a huge supply, but it's something that can be tapped, and people are asking about that. It would not be part of the water supply system, so you wouldn't have to worry about the water getting stale. I just don't know if that's something that's reasonable. It can be filled over time, and would it just sit there waiting, and where people would want them located or tap them in. But you have heard about people saying, hey, we need different water storage for fire alone and not for potable purposes.
Yeah, and Rachel, to respond to that, I think, and this may have been breezed over in the presentation, but when Steve and Aaron talk about kind of the stream flows being 50% of average, we may get to a point midsummer where we're almost sweeping Castle and Maroon Creek for all the water they have to meet our primary and secondary demand. So, to be honest, there's a future outcome where we don't have extraneous water to even do
Right.
trials like that.
Well, and I guess I'm talking about long-term thinking, that if we were to a point where we thought there were a few critical areas that we would need something like that and fill them in the winter when it's not summer, or, that just is it something that we would want to look at in the long term?
Yeah, and I would probably defer to our emergency response folks in fire about their tactics for firefighting. So I think they're next after our presentation.
Great, thank you. Did you, anybody else?
Since we got a lot.
Yeah,
of other
please, go
people
ahead.
Behind us, but wanted to kind of say, what are we doing now?
And
to
take your
respond?
time, this is really important.
So we kind of talking about what we're doing now and the different buckets we presented as far as what it means. And so I'll kind of let Steve recap source water side, what we're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Source waters, as you guys know, Castle and Maroon, and we're blessed, for those who know the hydrology, those two streams, they have great groundwater contributions, which helps us out. Now, they're hydrologically linked, so there's lag in there, but it has helped us in the past. The other kind of boxes there, I won't retouch on because they're just kind of reiterating what we already went through. I will say we're still working on our continued diligence on the city's water storage rights. We're working with both local, state, and federal partners to kind of talk and see what everybody's doing and how you would make that feasible, both physical and financial. So those are things we're looking at, especially as we're, becoming more and more in drought and aridification type scenarios.
And on the system demand side, we talked about how we have the monitoring for the source water, but we also have real-time monitoring of our customer demands. And so we do continue to have that, and the operators have 24/7 insight into what the system is calling for usage. And so that helps them dial in and respond more quickly to kind of, like an emergent demand scenario. We are continuing the communication campaign that we started last year regarding drought messaging. And so to that end, as we put a lot of bill inserts monthly since September, reminding customers that we're in drought even when they're in a season that's not irrigating, just to give them some tips on how they can conserve even inside the home. We have staff that are also constantly monitoring all customer meters for alerts, alerting them to irregular or non-stop usage. And so that's 24/7 regardless of a drought stage. And so we have staff who do that daily, and they will call customers as soon as they see a continuous usage alert to let them know they might have something leaking inside their home or indicating a leak in the irrigation. So we're certainly going to continue that. And we also just want everyone to understand that we do need all of our customers to be rowing in the same direction. And so to see those reductions that we're looking for, we need all customer types to be responsive in the same way. An example that I mentioned at the beginning was city facilities that really showed they could do more than just talk the talk, but walk the walk. So our Parks Department, between July and September of last year, are already conservative in the water they use in all the different public spaces. And they reduced, average across all the different public parks they manage, over a 30% reduction in their usage in those spaces, which exceeds the stage 2. And so I think it's emblematic of the fact that it is definitely possible for all of our customers to have the same, if not greater, reduction. Because in some of those park spaces, there's limits to what they could reduce to maintain those spaces in a safe manner for recreation. So hopefully it's a message that it is possible, and we just hope that we can get the rest of the community on board. And lastly, there's kind of a programmatic bucket. We have the Drought Response Committee that's multi-departmental in the city to kind of get everyone on the same page as far as what it would mean to move drought stages and how that would impact the community at large. That has been stood up since last year and kind of ongoing monthly. We have conservation incentives and programs that we communicate to our customers about, the landscaping standards, irrigation audits they can go through. And we also, I wanted to just end on saying that we are very engaged with our regional peers and partners, many of which are in this room. We have a lot of staff that work if not weekly, then monthly with the fire department on a variety of issues. I think I heard about a joint training meeting that they're going to have later this week. And we are engaged with the emergency preparedness group and the ESF teams that Chris heads up. So we're not operating in a bubble. Just want to remind folks that we're very dialed in with how we can support the different emergency functions in conditions like this.
Thank you. Board members, any further questions or comments for this panel?
Just a quick comment. Our building was contacted by the city last week because we had a leak. And I'm grateful that the city has that in effect, and that's, the city sets a positive example for water conservation. Turns out it was a leaky toilet, and the problem has been fixed, but I think the speed with which you guys contacted us really helped save water. So thanks for your efforts.
That's great. I have a couple of comments. On the communication campaign, are we able to kind of get in room with the hotels and in room with the property management, household rentals? And this was years ago because I did advertising distribution, and we were working on clean air. And they had made a kind of a tent card that was put into all the hotels by the fireplace. And it's like, why there's burning every other day or whatever it was. I can't remember. And it was a kind of comic thing or something. But I think we've got to reach beyond our customer base in a way. And, if it's something that you worked with our communications department or some good graphic people, I think a lot of hotels would put it on their front desk or, leave it in the room the same way if you want to save water, hang your towels back up type of messaging. And so I'd love to see us reach a little further if we can. We're going to need to, let's put it that way.
Emily Ford in communications is, I think, a week away from having kind of an emblematic kit of communications, which I think will have tools like that we can incorporate.
Okay, yeah, and it's just like, you need to be able to say, okay, Fry's Properties, how many homes do you have? Here's 50 cards. Can you get them in your rooms? Because we're going to have some real issues. The second is that I know we have several wells that have water quality issues in such a way we really can't use them in the portable system. But I'd like to make sure we have an ability to hook fire hoses up to those if we don't already do something to change the structure to make sure that those could be quick access in the case of a fire. Maybe run those supplies out sooner than that. I have no idea what the water pressure is coming from any of those wells, but
Yeah, Rachel, to that. So they're hydrologically connected to the Roaring Fork River. So if the river is a trickle, you're not going to have much to work with those wells, even
Okay.
regardless of the water quality. It'll be a water quantity and pressure problem.
okay, I was unaware of that. I just knew we had the well over by the Eagles and the base of the Little Nell and things like that.
To the question of the water quality in the wells, ironically, or well timed today, actually, we were running one of the wells, and we'll be running it for a few weeks as a measure to get a new check on what the water quality is, since it's been a while since we've done a comprehensive review of those water quality constituents. So we're kind of trying to do diligence to see.
Right, and it was always something that there was a very minor blending of a little of that water with the rest of the system to be a fail-safe on that. And then when we get further along, not now, if there's real watering restrictions for people's perennials and grass, I understand. But sometimes you really have to care for trees differently. So I don't know if there's going to be any instructions necessary coming forward that, yeah, maybe you've turned off your whole sprinkler system, but you should still get out and water a couple of your trees. So we'll have to just think about what the instructions are to our property owners and how that might change over time.
The only thing that came to my mind is, as we're communicating in advance for landscapers and residents who are probably already putting in orders for perennials and flowers, to set expectations that they might want drought resistant or decrease their orders in terms of planting this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I've mentioned that to groups before too, because new plants always need more water than the established ones. Anything else? Okay.
Council, just to manage some expectations, staff has provided you a number of info-only memos on kind of the progression of drought and forecasts for spring into summer months. Those will continue, and the Drought Committee will meet in mid-April to hopefully come to a recommendation to present council with what we can foresee as impacts to the community based on that drought response measure. And then council, it'd be your prerogative to act upon that recommendation. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And whoever is the next panel.
Federal partners are our next panel.
Ooh.
Brent. Well, Brent's coming up here. I also see Lisa Dawson from Bureau of Land Management is on the line, so I'll let Brent introduce himself and give Lisa a heads up. Take
Okay.
yourself off mute.
All right, good afternoon. So Brent Davidson, I am the Deputy Fire Staff Officer on the White River National Forest, which is part of the Upper Colorado River Interagency Fire Management Unit, which is an interagency wildland fire and fuels program here in the area. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. If you're not, the UCR for short covers from pretty much Grand Junction to Meeker, here to Aspen, all the way up to Summit County. So it's a large landmass that we're responsible for. There's been a few different, actually, did Lisa want to?
I see she just popped off, so I'm going to, why don't you just keep going? If she comes back on, we will. I'm sorry?
I'm back.
Okay.
She's here.
Thanks. Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Lisa Dawson. I'm the field manager for the Colorado River Valley Field Office down in Silt. Thank you for having me, and I'm truly deferring to Brent for his expertise, but I'm here for any questions should you have some.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. I guess just to start off, there's been a number of changes in the federal agencies throughout the last year. And so the BLM and all the DOI fire resources have shifted to the United States Wildland Fire Service, which does not impact our UCR interagency fire program at this point. Everything's kind of business as usual with the name change as far as everything goes for right now. So we still have the same complement of resources and people to kind of do the job that we've had over the last few years. What that includes is 8 engines, 2 wildland fire modules, a 10-person fuels crew, and then we have 2 helicopters in the area. One of them is more controlled by the local unit. It's a Type 3 helicopter with a 10-person crew, and then there's a Type 1 helicopter that's more controlled nationwide, kind of goes where the need is, but in dry years ends up sticking pretty close to around here to assist us. We also put together a Type 3 incident management team every year for the local area, and that'll be stood up again this year. In addition to that, we bring in a number of different resources to help out, incident commanders and duty officers, engines, crews, et cetera, kind of timing with the peak of our fire season. And last year we had resources around for quite a few months just because of the lack of rain. And we'll be looking to do that again. In addition to that, the geographic area, both with the Forest Service and just the Rocky Mountain region, they also have a lot of pre-positioned resources that we see come through here, especially with I-70 being kind of the major travel route. It's a good pre-positioned place for them to go to other places and support us here. Already this year, we have the Rocky Mountain area is looking to set up a task force of resources here in the next few weeks, probably because of conditions. So we'll start to see an influx of resources coming in, probably into the Front Range of Colorado already. I don't have a bunch of slides there. Chris put one in the presentation. I actually wasn't able to do that because I've already been on a fire assignment this year. I was in Florida for the last couple weeks, just returned about a week ago, and we've had a number of resources. There you go, thank you. It's a good one.
Thank you.
We've had resources supporting, the Front Range throughout the winter during some of their peak fire season or high fire danger days, as well as Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, and now folks up in Nebraska and such. So I think it's indicative of the kind of year we're going to have, not just here locally, but across the West and parts of the nation where we're going to have a pretty high resource demand for a lot of either fire danger or ongoing fires. So it's something that we're paying attention to, to try to be as prepared as possible, but know there may be stretched resources because of all the things that are going on unless conditions change. Some of the things that have been done in the past that we're going to continue to work really hard with is just cooperator coordination with all the different partners and agencies here locally, specifically on fire restrictions. That seems to be a pretty big one, so that we're all providing the same messaging to all the communities. And, they're not all, folks don't always realize what agency, jurisdiction, land base, who there is, where they're recreating, things like that. So being on the same page is very important. So we'll continue that fire restrictions coordination. And we'll look at that implementation of that, as soon as conditions, kind of show that that's something we need to start doing. There's not a time and a date that we start doing that, but we'll just pay attention to where conditions are at and we'll continue to do that. Another thing is the prevention and education portion. Trying to get information out to the public in every way that we can on fire danger and how to recreate smartly and all those different things. One of the tools available to us that the BLM brought in last year are fire education and prevention teams, where it's like a 2 or 3 week assignment where a bunch of people come in and they do a campaign to try to combat a specific fire problem that's happening, or get a particular message out, or just get out in the woods and make a bunch of contacts. Last year there was one brought in down to the Grand Junction area and along the I-70 corridor. They worked quite a bit. Just about a lot of their focus was chains dragging and all the fires that are starting on the roadsides. There was about 200 fires last year in the UCR. About half of those were human and roughly half of those were roadside starts. So that's a big issue that we're starting to see. And we'll look at bringing more of those prevention education teams in as we can. The other thing I'll just touch on, is the prescribed fire and fuels work. There's a lot of coordination going on, and I think we'll continue with that. Working with Aspen Fire and Pitkin County, looking at Smuggler Mountain as one of the places to do some retreating of mechanical, hand cut in piles. Also looking at north of Slaughter Gulch near the Sunnyside RX from a couple years ago, doing some more work around there. And then Shadow Mountain, there's a pretty big effort and some conversations going on in the Shadow Mountain area and some of the more urban interface areas of Aspen, and starting to do some work on that. The other thing we'd really like to do is to look at more opportunities for some landscape level planning in the larger area, so that we have more treatment going on and more options for prescribed fire. It's tricky to find the windows to implement prescribed fire. So if we have a number of different options on the table when conditions are in different places throughout the year or throughout the years, then we have different options of where we can actually implement those fuels projects and those prescribed fires. The slide, I have to speak to the slide that's up on the slideshow right now. So, the federal agencies are continuing to try to morph with our changing fire year and be innovative and try different things out. The thing that's on the screen right now is Operation Skyhammer. It was brand new last year. They actually used the Type 1 helicopter it's usually based out of the Rifle, out of Rifle Airport off the UCR. And they paired it with another Type 1 helicopter, and then something called a Helco, which is an aerial observation platform and a smaller helicopter that can coordinate and detect fires and things like that. And then they had a mobile retardant base that they used to fill the helicopters. So at least their first loads off the ground, they came with retardant, and they worked in tandem along with some aerial supervision to try to have a fast response to emerging incidents. It was more of a surge resource that was used for initial attack on emerging incidents, or if there was a need on a larger fire to do some sort of specialized work with that group of equipment. It was it was very successful. It was used a lot, as you can see there. And then did something they're going to continue this year. They've actually reassigned our Rifle Type 1 helicopter to primary use as Skyhammer this summer, and then they're replacing that helicopter with another one for us here on the UCR. That's all I've got.
Lisa, is there anything you'd like to add before we turn it over?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you. Council members, questions or comments? I'm just kind of wondering to understand the full interface of your work and your agency with the local Forest Service. Are you a division under the Forest Service, or How does that
It's a
all?
little confusing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
So, no, the Fire and Fuels Program is an interagency program between the Wildland Fire Service and the Forest Service. And so we kind of specialize in the fuels and fire portion of that, but I'm still a Forest Service employee. I still coordinate with, all of the specialists and everything on planning for fuels projects. We still, do Forest Service work and are very integrated that way, as well as the BLM as well, or the Wildland Fire Service also works hand in hand with the BLM. It's just, we don't have to, we have an agreement so that we can respond to fires across jurisdictions without any issues. And then we can do fuels work as well through that agreement with BLM folks on Forest Service lands and vice versa. With the kind of checkerboarding of federal land in the area, it makes a lot of sense that we can just work between,
Oh,
without
absolutely.
having to worry about the borders.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful to understand that. I'm just looking at what we saw occur with the federal government cutbacks in the Forest Service, and it's my understanding that the team that normally would do NEPA work for next year's or next season's controlled burns was really reduced in size pretty strongly, and I'm just kind of wondering who is working on identifying fuel reduction mitigation programs in the future and getting those permitted? Because I agree with you, you need multiple sites depending on the weather and be ready to roll when you can. And the other question is kind of related, again, just to Forest Service staffing for trail rangers, because our local nonprofits kind of tried their best to pick up that slack. And I seem to recall the number was about 100 campfires they'd put out that had been left abandoned and things like this, that normally we'd have some Forest Service rangers helping us with that. Is there any chance to get that sort of staffing level back, or, where is this all going? I think it's of concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how much I can speak to that, really. It's really a restructuring of the Forest Service, so who knows exactly how that's going to be in the future, but it's been, trying to streamline more direct channels to, the Washington office and things like that. So I do think you're going to see some changes of we were allowed to do some hiring. Just recently, we advertised for seasonal hiring again and things like that. So I do think there's going to be, the restructuring is going to lead to, I think some more people back on the ground and stuff like that, but it's taken a minute.
Well,
so.
I think that's great, and I just want to mention that so that if you can put a word in, because it's a lot better to have a few people who can prevent fires than have to call out all the helicopters and everyone else to put them out.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to see a little more put on that softer side of prevention.
Absolutely. Agreed.
And we'll add to it, too, when Aspen Fire's up here, they can talk about some of their initial attack crews that they have planned for the summer at the sheriff's office. We're going through this process right now. You're familiar with those backcountry community resource officers. That was a highly successful program last year. They're looking to hire 2 more this year. So, again, my role, bringing all these subject matter experts together, we're going to, once those folks get hired, we want to bring them together so there is a coordinated local response or local mitigation effort to help support what our federal partners have
Absolutely,
going.
yeah. We're all partners in this, and we appreciate that. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
All right. Renee Nicolette from DFPC is also on the line. Renee, can you hear us? Introduce yourself, please.
Got to make her a panelist here real quick.
All right, Renee, you should be able to.
All right, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. I apologize I could not be there in person today, but I appreciate you inviting me to speak to you all about this, as we all are very concerned about this summer and hoping we do get monsoons and lots of rain. But in the meantime, we should be planning for that not to happen. So my name is Renee Nicoletta, and I work for the state for the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control. And our priority role is to assist and support local agencies with a range of wildland fire management programs, which include some administrative things, technical, preparedness planning, response, and prescribed fire and fuels management functions. Next slide, please. All right. So let's see here. Some of the things we do for preparedness is the first thing that we really work with is we have a lot of agreements with our federal and local partners that really kind of creates the framework of how we do business together. And we create these agreements well before fire season. One example that we're really involved with Pitkin County is the County Wildfire Operating Plan. We had that meeting earlier in February where we just talked about how we're going to approach wildfires and, just kind of the technical operational things. And if there are any updates, lessons learned from the previous season, we just discuss that, make sure we're all on the same page prior to wildfire season happening. So we have already had that meeting and we're all in agreement and kind of already addressed that. Another piece of it is wildland funding. We do have funding guidelines that allow us to assist local jurisdictions with funding and reimbursement. That is required to be by request of the responsible local government agency. The emphasis for this wildland funding is for rapid initial attack. So the fire doesn't get big and become a state responsibility fire. We want to make sure that, the county or the fire department isn't worried about how they're going to pay for trying to put out a fire and keep it small. So they know that they have that resource available through us. Another piece is our emergency fire fund, which is called EFF. Pitkin County does participate in EFF, and this funds state responsibility fires in the state. And when that is depleted, then it can go to an executive order, which requires the governor to make that. So Pitkin County does participate in that every year. We do have battalion chiefs, deputy, and district chiefs, which are available to assist the local fire department and counties with all things wildland fire and with DFPC. We also have a state Colorado mutual aid response. We call that CMAS program. It was created to assist with the mobilization of resources when the local, regional, and federal ordering systems that we normally use on wildfires have been depleted, and the incident still needs critical resources to respond. So a great example is last summer, the Lee and Elk fires. They got big really fast, and the normal ordering system was just tapped out, and they couldn't get resources available in the time needed. So we tapped into that state Colorado mutual aid response system and got people from kind of out of the area, but got them there a lot quicker for just a couple days until those resources from farther away came in. We also have added state dispatchers to the federal interagency dispatch centers. So this allows for year-round coverage, not just seasonal, which typically interagency dispatch centers were. And part of that is because we now have a lot of year-round aircraft that need to be available. So that helps with the dispatching of our year-round aircraft and our resources as well. We've also added on an intelligence unit. Let's see here.
Sorry about that. I'll go back.
That's all right. We have also added an intelligence unit, which provides situational awareness and intelligence products that are available to us at DFPC, but then also our local and federal partners. We have pre-incident early detection, which is through satellites, and we can also use our aircraft for that. We create weekly fire environment weather briefs, fire status, and an environment dashboard. So it's a dashboard that is open where people can go to one central place and look up all kinds of information, fire weather information, fires around the state, that kind of thing. During the incident, we also create fire intelligence packages for initial and extended attack and early detection with satellite data, which is FireGuard. So those intelligence packages, a lot of times we are able to produce those before, say, a team comes on, or if it's a smaller fire and the local agency doesn't have the ability to create maps or, kind of forecast weather because they're busy putting out the fire before it gets big, we're able to provide some of that. All right, next slide. So for operational readiness, what the state is able to do. We have several state-managed resources for several purposes. As Brent was alluding to, sometimes there are certain resources that are controlled nationally or regionally. The reason why we chose to have state-managed resources is so that we can make decisions at the state and not the national level, which means we can keep them in state during drought periods rather than them being moved elsewhere to other big fires, because I have a feeling the entire West is going to be in drought. So everyone's going to try to hold on to their resources. But sometimes if we don't have anything going on, things get moved. But with these state-owned resources, we will keep them in state, regardless of what's going on around us. We also can have longer contract periods. It's not just based on fuels conditions on federal lands. So when the Eastern Plains are in high fire danger, that's not necessarily a federal, concern sometimes, because a lot of it is private. But it allows us to have longer contract periods for some of these resources. We also are able to use them for multi-purpose, so they can be used for all hazards, not just wildfire. We can use them for like our multi-mission aircraft. If we think that there's a plane crash, we had a call about that recently in Pitkin County. Somebody called in and thought that maybe there was a plane crash. We were able to fly the MMA and have them do some information gathering with their cameras to see if there was a plane crash. We also use it to support local government, providing resources that they don't have or can't afford. So Pitkin County and Aspen Fire and the other local Pitkin County departments can't afford a helicopter, or a multi-mission aircraft. So we're able to support the local government with having these resources. So the resources we do have is we have 2 single-engine air tankers, which we call seats. They are on an exclusive use contract, which means that it's exclusive use for the state of Colorado. And they are on 240-day contracts, and that started today. We will loan them out to neighboring states if we can on occasion, but we do like to keep them in state, and then we'll reevaluate if they need to go to other, neighboring states if it's possible. We also contract a large air tanker, which we call a LAT, for a 120-day exclusive use contract, again, meaning it stays in state. And that starts around May 15th. Sometimes we will bring it on earlier. We're probably going to look at that this year, reevaluate if we're going to bring it on earlier. And sometimes we also extend these contracts to stay on later. So even though we have them for 240 and 120 days, on occasion, we will extend it either earlier or later or both. We also have 2 state-owned Type 1 helicopters, which are called our Firehawks. They are available year-round. One is located in Montrose and one is in Broomfield. We have 2 state-owned Type 2 helicopters, so they are also available year-round. And we have 2 state-owned multi-mission aircraft, which they are used for information gathering. They have infrared and color cameras that can map. They can also do flight detection. So if there's been a large lightning bust, then they can go and they can download the lightning map and go and look and see if any of those lightning strikes have started fires to get people on the ground and get information before we actually see smoke in the air. Again, these are all located in certain locations, but during fire season, they can be moved to any place throughout the state where they're needed. Our seats are based out of Fort Collins, but last summer they spent the majority of the summer in Rifle. And one of our Firehawks was in Rifle as well for a significant amount of time. We also have call when needed aircraft, and this is for the shoulder season. So prior to today, we had seats that were on the call when needed aircraft, and they're available for, it says 265, but it's actually 365 on an at-needed basis. So if we have a fire season, if we have something happen in January, we can call that call when needed aircraft and have them respond. We also have 6 suppression modules and 1 fuels module located across the state. We have at least one in each district. Our state is divided up into 4 quadrants, and then we have regions within those 4 quadrants, but we have 6 of them, and there's at least 1, sometimes 2 in each district in the state. They can be combined to create larger hand crews. They're usually comprised of about 10 people, but we can also combine them to create a larger hand crew if we need it. They're pretty versatile with UTVs, snow machines, and Type 6 engines. And there is a large portion of them that are on year-round, and we have a few that are temporary seasonal employees that will get hired on and then come on earlier in the season as well to create that about 10-person module. We have 4 daily staffed engines that are stationed across the state, and we have several other additionals that can be staffed in addition at an on-needed basis. So a lot of those additional engines are tied in with those suppression modules so that they can split out and they can have a hand crew plus an engine if they need it. We also have a large contingent of overhead. So we have battalion chiefs, deputy, district, and district chiefs. We are all available on request for technical assists and with local and county wildland fires. We can also be agency administrators or assist agency administrators if the fire doesn't become state responsibility. A lot of times we work with the county managers or the sheriff or even the fire departments if they have a multi-jurisdictional fire that they need assistance with because they don't do it. They don't do the agency administrator position very often. We can assist with that as well, helping with, financial information, cost shares, those kinds of things. But when it does become state responsibility, then we become the agency administrator, and we still continue to work closely with those local departments, making sure that as a local subject matter expert for your area, that we are achieving all of your goals, making sure that, what you want to be achieved will happen. And that is the end of my presentation. Any questions?
I have none. Thank you, Renee. Let me look at my board. Any further questions? No, thank you very much. I appreciate your work keeping everything in tip-top shape and ready to roll.
You're welcome.
All right. Hopefully you're starting to get the theme here that we're working together a lot. We have a lot of resources that we're prepared for. And, from an emergency management perspective, our role is really what I'm doing today is coordinating everybody with subject matter experts, supporting those local fire districts and law enforcement, and the Roaring Fork Valley Wildfire Collaborative, which we're going to have come up and talk next. Angie, if you want to come on up and get ready. But really, what our message is, and we heard about it even when we were learning about the local Aspen drought and what the utilities are doing, we want to get that unified, clear message out to the constituents, to the citizens of the area, to make sure that messaging is clear. So we work a lot with the communications folks at the local level, at the county level, and our state and federal partners as well, to be able to make sure that messaging is consistent and clear for everybody. We had a work group session a couple weeks ago. We heard a lot last year about stage 1 and stage 2 fire restrictions. Some of the language is a little odd. As Brent talked about, people aren't really sure what dirt they're standing on. Is it local land? Is it federal land? So we're working on really trying to work the preparedness side to make those messages as clear as we can, and we have some go kits, and some other messaging that's ready to go. Can't talk about this enough, but the evacuation accountability, we're all the responders that are working on the mitigation preparedness, and then, if the day comes, the response side of it, but the citizens that are, listening to this and seeing this, they have a responsibility and an accountability also, and that's understanding what the situational awareness is and then acting as appropriate when either directed to do so by the authorities or also making their own personal decisions because they have to leave. And using the pitkinemergency.com is a great place to start working with that, and we can start to work with those folks if there's livestock and other areas that to help with the coordination to get those moving along. But it's that interagency coordination that starts at the federal level. It works all the way down to the local level of the things that we're doing. You folks as leaders within the city, testing and our emergency operations center functions. Renee talked about agency administrators, the policy groups that all of you you would, potentially be a part of. And then that joint information center. So that's when we're bringing the operations better together to get things going. We have folks here from RAFTA today that we've been working a lot, and they're available to answer questions as well. Evacuation planning is a really big thing. They have a lot of metrics that can tell us what's moving in and up and down valley throughout a business day, throughout different times of the year. We bring those partners in to understand what some of those evacuation plans should look like. What we understand from our public safety partners, the choke points that are naturally going to happen, and all working with our law enforcement if we did have to execute an evacuation, what that looks like. And again, that information is all available on our Pitkin Emergency website, and also through our messaging if and when we need to execute it. So with that, I'm going to stop there, see if there's any questions for me, and then we'll turn it over to the collaborative to talk a little bit more. You mentioned it earlier about some of the mitigation strategies that are happening, and Angie can talk a little bit about that. But
Okay.
first.
No, I was just wondering, and this ties in a little to having just seen the senior center presentation earlier. Do we have any sort of sense of identified where shut-ins might live, people without their own car or who would need help evacuating? Do we start to track that or think about that? Or is that Aspen Police responsibility? Is it Pitkin Sheriff responsibility? Is it emergency managers? Whose responsibility?
Yeah, it's a combination of everybody.
Okay.
There is, again, it's that situational awareness from that local law enforcement that's on the ground, the sheriff's deputies that are out there. They can see some of those populations that may be vulnerable. We're not only just looking at the people who have maybe those access problems, but also our medical folks that are living in the community. We're going to be doing an exercise here coming up in about 6 weeks. We're familiar with the public safety power shutoffs, and you witnessed it very closely back of the Lake Christine fire. So we want to get awareness as to what those peoples are, but also maintaining their privacy if they don't want to share it, but being ready to respond if and when that happens. So there's a lot of concentration that's built into that aspect of our planning and mitigation. And again, it's not just those, but people that are here vacationing and they don't have their personal vehicles here. So again, we've had a lot of conversations with RAFTA about, understanding what are the heads and beds, as the comment was made earlier, in the area, and of that population, who doesn't have vehicles, and that we need to rely on our public transportation partners to be able to help move those folks out.
Yeah, I'll just let it go, but I wanted to pass along, there was a bill this session, the Robbins bill, you may have heard of that, to make all utilities provide backup power generation in the home for people on medical devices. And so before you do an emergency power shutoff, please make sure that no one's depending on that to run their ventilator or things like this. It was a tragic death in Montrose, I believe.
And just to add that, in my prior life, I came from the healthcare industry, and it's part of our emergency. It's the CMS and the federal government requires that when you have those home oxygen devices, home medical devices, that there is an emergency plan that the patient or the customer has to understand what their responsibility is in it as well. And we want to try to get some of that messaging out preemptively so that they can prepare for that, because it's one of the pieces of paper and a packet of paperwork that they give you. It's a very important one, and making sure that those folks understand that they can identify themselves so that we can help them if and when needed. But good
So
point.
you're working with Aspen Valley Hospital on that?
Yes, we are. Yes.
Thank you.
Angie, you want to introduce yourself?
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. I'm Angie Davlin. I'm the Executive Director of the Wildfire Collaborative Roaring Fork Valley, and we are truly a collaborative. We exist to support the work of all of the agencies that you've heard tonight. We have people behind you that are on our board that, come to our stakeholders meetings, and our role is to support them, extend their work, have an ability to focus solely on wildfire in ways that their kind of multifaceted work doesn't allow them to do full-time. And then also we can nimbly cross boundaries. So if you look at that map there, we can see kind of the main things that we do. One of those is large-scale, multi-partner, cross-boundary fuels reduction work. And all of the areas there that are orange are projects that were either in progress or already completed. or soon to be coming. We also have partnered with federal agencies on prescribed burns and really serving as an outreach partner and expanding the work of those federal agencies outside of their federal lands onto private land and public-private partnerships. We certainly help expand evacuation work by doing fuels management and evacuation routes. More of that to come after our modeling results hit. And then all of the areas in blue right there are our newest project and really the focus of late 2025, early 2026 for us, bringing the best available data science to our valley to understand how fire moves. And I do want to talk to you a little bit about that today. Next slide. To give you an example of one of the fuels reduction projects in Pitkin County, you'll soon here see a picture of the Soapers Mountain Ranch area. The map shows you a little bit about how all of the different partners really came together to fund and support this project, which is a critical fire break in the Mid-Valley area between Aspen and Snowmass. And to give you some context for why that area is critical, a few years ago, Roaring Fork Fire and the Forest Service did a simulation fire, and they found that fire would run from Carbondale, a fire kind of started by a cigarette or a chain dragging just outside the town limits, and spread all the way to Snowmass in less than 12 hours. So it's an area of really dense fuels, continuous fuels, and really no great area for firefighters to get in and kind of stage an area to slow down or prevent fire from reaching that community. And also an area so dense of trees that aerial support would have a hard time getting water all the way onto the ground. So we raised close to $2 million for that project from all of the partners you can see up there, the Forest Service, the BLM, some private partners, the Soapers Mountain Ranch HOA, Pitkin County, and importantly, some grants. And now we are halfway through a 300-acre portion on private land. And you can see there, this is not the invisible fire breaks that we sometimes talk about. This is a big project creating a fuels break. Yes. So far, we have removed 1,000 trees, 2,000 tons of vegetation, and those are in 80 piles waiting to be burned as soon as the conditions are ready for them to do so. We'll do the other 150 acres this fall. And then our federal partners and our BLM partners will do fuels thinning and prescribed burns in the areas you can see there. The lime green is federal, and the pink is BLM. And because of this collaborative effort, we'll have a really solid fuels break in this area that we did not have before.
And which color is the fuel break? Is it the orange?
It's actually all of the colors combined. So the private land that you can see in that picture is the orange, and that's connected to the blue and the pink, which are BLM treatments. And then the green portion will extend somewhere in that area, just really pulling the work further out.
Thank you.
So I do want to talk to you about what wildfire modeling looks like. You can just keep going. I have like the 30-second version, which you can see in these slides. So this is a map you're probably well familiar with. Aspen is the dense collection of black dots to the bottom right. Snowmass Village is the slightly less dense version up there on the left. I know it's a little bit tricky to read this map. Right now, the best available wildfire modeling that we have looks a lot like this. And there are different versions of this slide, but you can, no matter which version I show you, you can quickly see that there are two main problems with this. You can click over. The first, as soon as it pops up, is that almost all of our area is the highest level of risk. This is the fire intensity scale for that same area. It's showing you that the majority of the area would support the highest intensity of fires here. Fires that would be very difficult for our incredible firefighting professionals to fight, and in a lot of areas, difficult to even use aerial support on. You might also notice that all of the areas that we care most about, where homes are and where people live, are gray. And that's because in this model, they're treated as urban areas, and this type of wildland fire modeling can't account for that. So we had to find a better way. And through a lovely convergence of events, we found Dr. Hussam Mahmood. He was the keynote speaker at a state fire conference. He does work all over the nation. He was also recommended to us by a very science-forward funder who had done kind of intense research on the scientific validation of his model. And his work can actually predict how fire moves in a community with almost 90% accuracy.
The urban spread model.
Exactly. No other model out there has that level of validation or accuracy, and so we think it's really critical for this area. What it will do for us is it will help us figure out where to target treatments. And even if we had hundreds of millions of dollars, we could not possibly get this area thinned enough to be safe, nor would we really want to. So we're going to be strategic with our limited resources, and we'll have great data for this. We're actively collecting data in Aspen right now. Soon, or maybe already, you'll receive a postcard in your mailbox with information on that survey, which I think I popped in there if you go one more. Oh, that's Hussam. This is him talking about the validation of his model in Hawaii recently. And then this is what that postcard looks like. We're working directly with HOAs. We're doing a public information campaign, social media, thanks to our partners Aspen Fire, helping us get the word out also. But we're committed to getting to 100%. And again, warm thanks to Aspen Fire for providing the funding for that. The more people that take the survey, the better. But we are sending our data collector home to home for every single home that does not take the survey. The difference in accuracy of the results goes from 60% with average data to almost 90% with real data. And so that's quite important to us. Lastly, I just wanted to share that the collaborative will be almost 2 years old next month, or will be 2 years old next month. Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah. It's not happening on my screen.
Ominous.
Very
I'm reconnecting.
And, it was started really as a pilot to figure out if this was a viable model. I think in that time, we've really shown, if we only look at it from a financial perspective, it's been a great success. It's funded operationally about 50% by 13 different partners, including all of the municipalities and City of Aspen. Thank you very much for your support. 3 of our 4 counties, Pitkin, Eagle, and Gunnison, and all 4 fire districts, and all 4 fire chiefs sit on our board. And then if you take those stakeholder dollars and you compare those to the $6.7 million that we've raised in the past 2 years, we're really showing that every dollar those stakeholders bring in is delivering $30 in cash for us to then turn around and put on the landscape. So we're really proud of that. We're kind of launching our donor fundraising, but I just wanted to share gratitude for you all for trusting in this model and trusting in us to make it work.
Very good job.
Any questions for Angie?
Questions or comments? No. Thank you.
Thanks, you all.
Aspen Fire. Last but not least.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us. All right, so we'll just go over kind of some of the stuff that some other folks have already discussed. We don't need to go through all that, but that shows you essentially the type and amount of apparatus we have. And these are around serving you 365. Some of them are a little more specialized than others, but this is what we have staffed in our stations any given day. Let's see. Oh, and just something else to bring up on there. I don't see that up there, by the way. So maybe make sure we're using the same presentation if we can.
It says Chris is on that slide.
But yeah, we just did want to bring up the seed agreement, right? We have an agreement with the city, with the county, and with the fire district and IGA set up to support refill of single engineer tankers that are operated by DFPC. With water out of Sardi Field. We're still working on getting the training for our firefighters out there to be able to make that a reality, but the target is to have that online and operational this year. There's been some changes at the DFPC that have kind of affected that, but I think it's still a program that's viable, should be moving forward. The main thing behind that is when these single engine air tankers show up here on a fire, especially if it's one in the Upper Valley, it's going to have an impact on the airport. So again, just for the people out there and to remind you folks, the goal there is to use the airport as an asset to then be able to land those airplanes there, refill them quickly, and get them right back up in the air without them having to go back to the front range in the off season or even to rifle during the summer. Oh, sorry. So I guess we just kind of jumped into it, but we should do some quick intros.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm Jake Anderson. I'm the fire chief with Aspen Fire.
Allie Hammond, Director of Community Wildfire Resilience.
Oh, yeah.
So, and we'll just go through trying to tag on to everything else other folks have said today. We're really trying to leverage technology, knowing that we are a small fire department, right? And that we are going to have some burst capacity and ways to force multiply to help us be more effective. You guys are all aware of the Pano AI camera project, right, that started here in 2021. We have 4 cameras directly surrounding the city, but there's an additional at least 4 throughout the valley at this point. So we have a pretty good eye on a lot of our area. We're covering what gaps still exist with satellite detection, and then also the state, when there's a lightning bust or whatever, they do fly that multi-mission aircraft pretty frequently, and there's a process for us to request that if we need it for a special reason also. I think everyone's aware one of our goals when it comes to suppression is early detection and early impact, right? Like we want to reduce the amount of time it takes for us to find these things and then to get resources on them. So another step of that, we do have a privately funded program where we'll be the first in the nation to have a set of 5 semi-autonomous wildland firefighting copters that will be showing up in a trailer this year for use on basically private, city, and county lands. They will not be available for federal use yet. We are already working on that process, including hiring experts to help us work through that. But the process to get another aviation program certified to work on federal land typically takes years. And you have to have the program in place to be able to prove that you're doing it right. So we actually have to have this operational, have our training program, our maintenance program, the entire operation working in order to pursue that capability. But we're working as fast as we can on it. Again, this is currently privately funded. It is really cool technology, but as of yet is still unproven, right? So we felt like that was the most appropriate way to move this
What
here.
is a firefighting suppression drone? Look, you called it a copter as opposed to a drone. What's it look like? How much water does it carry?
It's that, except the version that'll be showing up here will have 8 rotors instead of 4. I believe it'll have about 20 gallons of water, and then mixed with whichever suppressant is in it, they estimate about 100 gallons of finished foam.
Okay.
They'll weigh upwards of 300 pounds when they're fully loaded. They're big. And the thought process behind them is that they're decreasing that time to impact on a wildland fire.
Sure.
The fact that we can have 5 of them, the thought process there is that, yeah, 20 gallons isn't that much, but then you have 40, 60, 80, right? And you just continue to send these, and, you know, they can fly at nighttime, they can fly in adverse conditions. At present, I do not believe we have any aviation assets in the state of Colorado that fly at nighttime. So the ability to do that when fire's kind of at its weakest, especially while it's small, could really be a game changer. So
That sounds great. No, I just wanted to get a little detail. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like the size of the hole in between the desk. It's big, like you could put a saddle on it and, you know, carry 5 people. Not actually, but just to give you an idea of the scale and size of it.
Appreciate that. Okay, thank you. We'll have to take a look at them when they come in.
Yeah, we're excited to get them, start training with them and start to build out the program. In the future, right, they might not all be located in a single trailer. They might be at remote sites.
Oh, sure.
Able to deploy when there's a fire detected and be faster. But it's all about developing that program that we are working, or Seneca is working closely with the FAA. So we're trying to cover all the steps to make this happen. And what's a pretty groundbreaking, small amount of time.
Very good.
Something else I did want to bring up, since it came up earlier, was water availability. Well, a couple things on that front. One is reiterating that the external fire suppression systems are not, they're not efficient, not advised. There is a company that we've just started talking with called Sonic Fire Tech that it's literally rocket scientists working together on using sound waves at the appropriate wavelength to make basically the oxygen molecules in the air unusable by a wildfire. And they are working on scaling, so basically almost like an external suppression system, but without water, just with like sound waves. So we'll keep you updated on if that is a viable option in the future. But it was very, very exciting to see their demo videos. And then also just want to throw out there, I'm not by any means a water expert, but I do think it may be interesting, gonna throw it out there, like looking into gray water uses, just like that's something that can be used for irrigation or flushing a toilet. Yeah, so throwing that one out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to get back on the exterior fire suppression systems, right? We don't support those at present, right? And reason being that they have more of a potential to have a negative impact on firefighting efforts than they do to have a positive.
Draining the hydrants before you
Correct.
get there.
That said, I think it's a great thing that we have citizens out there that are trying to find solutions, right? Which is why we're trying to help them find ones that actually work in tandem and complement the solutions that we're trying to find as well. And so more to come on that. But the most important thing people can do is have fire-resistant roof and siding and a fire-free first 5 feet around their house. If you have that in place, spraying water on a metal roof doesn't do a ton.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what we're trying to drive home, is that if you want bang for your buck, if you want a return on investment, that's where you spend your money.
Thank you. Do we know, are they being installed during construction, even though they're, quote, not allowed? I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, are people asking to be able to put them in, or, and I'm thinking more countywide, are they just kind of putting them in and they have a well perhaps they run them off of if it's out in the county?
Yeah, and I think I'll probably let Tyler or Aaron speak to this a little more, but I know that some of them started to pop up because there wasn't necessarily a permitting requirement, because these aren't really approved systems.
Okay.
So people started just putting them in, and then we started to find out about them as different things popped up, and that's kind of why we're trying to
Okay, so we
catch up.
need to perhaps address our code a little more.
Yeah, any water fixtures attached to the municipal water system are regulated because we have a finite capacity. So to Jake's point, yeah, we've heard of these popping up, and we've had citizens approach us about their effectiveness and if it would be a solution for their home. I think we've been able to head most of this off at the appropriate levels between our partnership with the fire district and our review staff. But thought it was important to get the word out. But we do think that there are a lot of other techniques that are more effective, as Jake alluded to.
Sure, okay. I just was wondering where we were in catching up with that process-wise.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the thought process behind it's positive, right? People are trying to find a way to be a part of the solution, and we're going to continue to try to find ways to help them be a part of the right solution.
Very good.
I think we've really driven home the current situation we find ourselves in this year, right? Last year, the brush fuel types around here were so drought stressed, they started going dormant in July. And I've never seen that, right? I don't know that I've talked to anyone that's ever seen that. And on the heels of that, we're having this winter now and preparing to head into this summer. We're very grateful, as most of you are aware, and as I believe all of you supported. We went out last November and asked our taxpayers to fund some different initiatives that will help us to address this in a more meaningful way. And we've been moving as absolutely fast as the organization can handle it to make that happen. That includes shoring up some of our support staff so we can support a larger organization. And we are currently in the process of building our first ever wildfire division, right, which will be stood up this summer, which includes those positions you see up there, wildfire battalion chief, wildfire lieutenant. So those will be the acting officers on a daily basis managing a seasonal firefighting and fuels management crew. And then we're also really trying to do a better job of telling the story and making sure we're getting consistent information out there. And so we're hiring a community engagement coordinator, which will be largely wildfire specific, but not totally. It's definitely going to be, we've got a lot of things to communicate that I think we can do a better job of. But those will be things that, or at least folks you'll start to see around hopefully in these meetings. And you'll see the, you know, and Ali and I were talking about this, we were trying not to overload you guys with slides, but our table of contents was 4 pages of all the things that we're trying to get done this summer. So we'll move on, but I want you to know we are trying to address this in a very meaningful way now.
Oh, I'm sure you are, yeah. Just in case you're interested, we do a community newsletter once a month, and we'd be happy to include information for you, or webpage, or any announcements that you might have as a secondary source to get it out.
Oh, that'd be great, especially this time of year. I've been getting a lot of questions about like what are native fire resilient species of plants. Yeah, you know, people are thinking about pulling out that juniper and putting in something that's a little bit more resilient next to the house. And we'd love to include some info, so thank you for
Yeah, no,
that.
that's a great idea. I'm sure the current one's a little bit in production, but we could focus one of the future community ones all about wildfire safety and protection.
Well, funny you should bring that up because May is Wildfire Preparedness Month.
Well, we'll be right on top of things.
Awesome. And then, so the next piece are some of the actual projects that we're working on getting done this year. Just wanted to share our priorities. We are focusing on life safety, right, and the built environment. So the evacuation route is the first place we're looking at. We started work under and around that last year in coordination with the city. And some of that work has already taken place. We're also looking at other areas like Shadow Mountain, Sunnyside. We've got some areas of Skico. And then I think we've got Smuggler, we're looking at Burlingame, Meroldt, North 40. Not all of these are necessarily right in the city, but I know there's some city or county land adjacency to a lot of these spots. And yeah, you guys will be a key partner in that. Part of the reason we're doing this modeling through Dr. Mahmood and others, we're doing a couple different ones, is because we want to have a really good picture of where we can get our best ROI. Like Angie said, we can't go treat everything, right? We've got to figure out what's a priority, what's going to make the biggest impact. We have areas this year that we know, even without modeling, need addressed.
Yeah.
Right, just from, you know, foresters and firefighters and their experience, like this is a problem. We can't send people in here to do anything if there's a fire, or we can't get people out. So we're focusing on those immediately. But the modeling will help advise all of the projects we have moving forward. And I think that would be a great spot for you guys to partner and help execute some of these projects. And you're already doing it. Your folks are doing an outstanding job of helping us build these plans and get them ready. But I think that's the ask we'll be coming to you with in the future is, hey, we'd love to support you guys with this. It's not our property, so what can we ask you to help us accomplish here? And we're looking to do that in much more of a science-based approach moving forward.
That's great.
So here's a good, you know, picture of, so I can just tell you real quick on there, right? So the yellow would be City of Aspen, green's the county, purple's Skico, and then Aces, I think, is, yeah, the
Light blue.
Light blue. So this shows you, even if we're only focusing on some of our
shared ownership.
shared ownership spots, we can actually still make a really substantial impact. None of these are we trying to limit them specifically to those lots, but I just want to communicate the impact you could have even on Shadow Mountain with just city, county, ski co property. The skiing company's already a very close partner on all this. They're even dedicating some of their crew's work time this summer to get some of these things done. And they're very interested in figuring out how they can be a force multiplier and help us do even more. Okay, Al, you want to touch on these?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we were talking about, like, for starters, what actually makes a difference, and Jake mentioned things like home hardening and changing your roof type. The first 5 feet around your home is, again, the most impactful place that you can do work. We are continuing to push for neighborhoods in our district to become Firewise communities. We had Starwood become our district's very first Firewise community within the last year or two. But that is like the take-home message. I know a lot of people do want, some kind of quick fix, like, well, if I put these sprinklers on my house, then it's solved, right? Which is very, very understandable. But at the end of the day, nothing replaces home hardening, defensible space. So we are having an event on June 6th. Unsure if it's in partnership with Arbor Day or two different stops, but it'll be a very exciting day where we'll get to, work with the city and work with our community and talk about things like Firewise plant lists and what can you do, and answer questions generally, talk about some of the projects that we have up in the queue. Our community chipping program, which we've partnered with the city and county since 2022 on, that has reached the point where it is district-wide, and we can offer curbside chipping, at least once summer, like throughout the valley, throughout the district, sorry. The graphs that are on the right side of this image are, this is what we're using to basically track where we're getting the most material out of when we do the chipping program. And so we're trying to, be able to show over time the impact that we're making and what communities are most involved. Let's see, and then just a quick final thought. We have also talked a lot, just given the challenges, especially in summertime, especially with so many people who are in town without a vehicle. We are looking at trying to assess the best places for areas of refuge. So, if in a worst case scenario and you can't necessarily evacuate, where do you go to? And so, food for thought for this council and for the rest of our partners, what properties, what does the city of Aspen own that's like a brick building with appropriate ventilation systems so that people could potentially shelter inside a building? We talk about, parking garages as potentially being on that list, irrigated fields, parks, open spaces. These are all the areas that people could be safer if they can't stay in place or they can't evacuate. But it's definitely worth thinking about, is there anywhere that the city could help provide that sort of space, whether it's indoors, outdoors, for a worst case scenario?
Thank you. I think we'll keep thinking on that. It strikes me that there might be actually some private sector locations, having delivered material to the very bottom of the St. Regis garage before. I think there's multiple layers down, more than our garage. But we'll keep that in mind and think about that. And that kind of does bring up the question, if there is an evacuation and people ask me, where would I go to catch a bus? Where do I go to get removed from town? Is that going to be dependent on the type of fire and the type of evacuation notice that is issued? There's really no way to tell people in advance, just go to Wagner Park or, go to the Hickory House or something like that.
Chris, do you want to answer that one?
You're absolutely right. I mean, we cannot predict where the next start is going to be and what are the impacts. So putting all of your eggs in a basket per se of saying go here and there is where the problem is or will be soon. So we look at it more from a strategic level. We've worked with the fire districts. We've worked with the folks from RAFTA on what's the volume that we would need to move. As Allie was talking about, getting the folks in the communities to understand what areas of refuge look like, what shelter in place might look like. God forbid if we have to go to that level. But also, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, is having that situational awareness beforehand. And if you have a loved one that is access and functional needs, and it looks like something is brewing in Gunnison County, maybe there's your sign that you should start the evacuation early. We're fortunate that we've been working with the Genesis evacuation tool system that has been used widely across the country. Fortunately, has not been used in Pitkin County yet. Fortunately for us, we've had some of our neighbors in Eagle and Gunnison County using it in the last couple of years. We've learned a lot of lessons from that. The purpose of that is a more orderly evacuation so we don't put large volumes of people on the street at any given time, so we can move people a little bit more effectively without stressing the known choke points that we have. But again, kind of to wrap up my part is the understanding at that individual, family level, what is your evacuation plan? And it's not that we're all sitting around the table at 5 o'clock at night having supper. Now we're going to get up and walk to the car and leave. It's the reality of one kid's at baseball practice, one kid is working, we're scattered throughout the city or even the valley, and now we have to evacuate. What is your plan? Where are you going to meet? And it might be something likely outside of the county, maybe even outside of the region, but how do you effectively communicate that within your little nucleus of a family to be able to execute that, because that's the reality of what could happen. So trying to get that message down to that individual living in the county, living in the city, that you have to be prepared. You have to have a go kit, and when things start to be communicated that things are happening in the area or in the region, take action. Waiting for us to tell you it's time to evacuate is probably the last chain in the link of movement. So really emphasizing there's tons of communication out there. The local fire districts have a lot of website information that talks about what evacuation plans look like, what go kits look like. Buy it. Buy it off of Amazon if you want. They make it easy for people to think about, but then individualize it to what your family needs, because unfortunately, when it happens, it's going to have to happen quick. So
It's too late when that happens. And I've talked to other past emergency managers and professionals in the industry who say, a lot of people will just wait till they say, I can't see any smoke yet, and they'll just keep waiting and waiting. But are we still at what was considered, at least the language before was, it would take about, if the whole town had to evacuate on a summer day, about 17 hours?
it would take a long time.
It would take a long time.
And again, our strategy to compound that is to not have to tell the entire city to leave at one time. We
Right.
do it in a more orderly fashion, using our transportation partners to get those folks that don't have transportation out of the area, and we can reduce that greatly if we're doing it more orderly and more methodically in our. But yes, that is a statistic that was put out there under one model.
Thank you. Other board member questions or comments? John?
Yeah, one question. I'm really glad that the airport's going to be open this summer because of what's going on right now. What happens next summer when the airport's closed?
As far as what he talked about?
Or the air suppression?
Yeah, we won't be able to use it to refill single-engine air tankers next summer.
Would we be able to connect with Rifle Airport or Garfield Airport?
Yep, and that gets complicated. There's some changes that have gone on at the federal level regarding air tanker refills, but as long as there's a high enough fire severity, my understanding is that the rifle base will be open. And again, that's not the end of everything, right? It's not that far away, especially from a flight time perspective. We just want to, when we can, be able to leverage the fact that we have this here. And if there's a fire with aircraft on in the Upper Valley, often it's shut down to normal traffic anyway, so we might as well utilize it to refill firefighting aircraft.
I also wanted to say how grateful I am that the voters of Aspen passed the ballot measure that helped fund a lot of this stuff, because it looks like we're trying everything possible. I'm really pleased to hear that we're going to be using drones to fight fires. That puts no firefighters in danger. Sound waves to fight fires, really excited about that. Not using any water. And new wildlife battalion chief, wildlife lieutenant, fuels management crew, evacuation plans. This is great news for the community, and I really want to thank everybody involved, because this is an existential threat to our community right now. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and to everyone for being here tonight. I think there's a lot of anxiety in the community, and I'm finding some comfort in this presentation, so I appreciate that. I have one thought on the kind of evacuation plan. You mentioned kids at baseball practice. There are a lot of kids that are younger and can't communicate with families, so encouraging schools and camps to be proactively thinking about reunification plans with families. You can have the conversation at the dinner table, but my 5-year-old is not going to know where to go when there's a fire. So making sure the adults in their room are thinking about that now. And then one question, is there any, you hit on this lightly, but the private sector, is there collaboration and any sort of competition with, we have a lot of really well-resourced individuals and residents in this community. We hear about private firefighting groups, wondering what sort of conversations happening on the side with maybe some of those residents or individuals and people working to protect their own assets.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't think of anything from a competitive standpoint. I do know that, some insurance companies employ their own firefighting crews. Some individuals do as well. The tough part is, unless they're stationed here all the time, it's very difficult to get those resources in to be able to be effective. I know there were some reports coming out of certain areas where they were effective in some of the firefighters that you've seen, and I think those have received a lot of press. I would tell you that from the experience of most of the people in the field, there's pretty mixed results there, and I wouldn't let one success story skew people toward thinking that that's the solution. There are fires that we don't have the tools to fight, right? That's why we're trying to catch them when they're small. That's why we're trying to catch them when they're early. A firefighter with hand tools is effective to 4-foot flames. A firefighter with equipment, you're looking at 8 feet. There are fires that are hundreds of feet tall, and with massive flame lengths that truly nothing is effective against. And even in those wind-driven scenarios, aircraft are either grounded or completely ineffective also, right? Because nothing's really hitting the ground, even if they're able to drop. So the solution to this, and we really wanted to hopefully be the folks bringing good news on top of all the stuff that's stacking up this winter, is there is a solution, right? Like, we can mitigate and manage and, improve the forest health, especially in the areas that are immediately adjacent to our built environment and people. And that's what we're trying to do. I'll be the first to tell you we're behind, right? Like, I wish we had done this 10 years ago, but I'm glad we're starting it today.
Great, thank you.
There's a lot that people wish they'd done 10 years ago when you get right down to it, but we're doing it now, and that's what counts. I'll come to you in 1 second, Sam. The one other area I'd like to add to your list to look at is when you go up Independence Pass, Highway 82 a little bit, to the sides of Smuggler Mountain, there's just red trees for, a huge swaths, and a lot of really overgrown, kind of decadent, the scrub oak. And so I thought of it myself when we kind of take a Sunday drive up towards a difficult campground, that would just crown right up and over that mountain. And so just keep an eye on that too.
Yeah, Mayor, we are actually working on, or at least in early
I know it's probably
discussions.
federal land, so.
Yeah, it is, but we're even trying to figure out how to help them move their NEPA process faster forward, right? And what if we didn't do one just for a specific area, but we did a larger one for all of the lands that are more adjacent to town, so that we have the ability to, in the future,
Yeah,
do some
move more
projects that
quickly.
move into there as well. And we are discussing how we can help move that forward faster. Because I think someone brought it up earlier that some of those resources are more limited than they used to be. And so it might even include helping to fund a private company to come through and expedite that NEPA process.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, thank you. Sam?
I'm so appreciative, and I do think this is an incredible bright spot. And I do think appreciate this work session because I think communication is key, because when we don't talk about this, people get filled with anxiety, but as long as we keep talking about it and it keeps getting brought up, it's so reassuring to know that we're doing just about everything and anything about this issue that's doesn't really matter about your creed, religion, or political beliefs. It affects everyone in our community from the bottom up. It's so exciting that we're on the cutting edge between the drones and the sound and all the things that we're doing. It's pretty incredible seeing the philanthropic support in addition to the sales tax dollars at work. So it's just incredible on all fronts in that regard. I know here we're at the council table, we're very excited about partnering with everyone and doing what we can. I appreciate the comments that you guys bring up, especially about 5 feet from your home, the whole think like an ember, and then we talk about like the size of flames, knowing that that everyone has their own personal responsibility when it comes to evacuation, but also protecting their own personal property, because if you do things right, then it won't become a fire engulfed structure, and it won't then affect your neighbor, and so on and so forth. So just the knockoff effect of everyone doing everything they can. And then, Allie, I do appreciate you bringing up the gray water. Water obviously being a precious and limited resource, so being able to recycle it, I do think it's one of those things that has been proven in other communities and countries and definitely could be of use here. But you guys are overloaded. We've talked about it. I've seen it. So I'm just so excited to see everything in action and to continue this conversation and keep moving all these initiatives forward.
Thanks, Sam. And I will add that a little bit of anxiety is probably good.
Yeah.
Too much anxiety, you get the analysis paralysis.
Healthy amount.
But having enough where you understand the challenge and are empowered to the solutions. Thanks for having us.
I appreciate that. I would say actually clarity-wise that we get a lot of the same questions over and over again, and that's why all this stuff needs to be hammered home. So it's a reminder this stuff has been talked about. So many things are happening. Have the anxiety, but instead of having to pay attention constantly, it's going to come up again and again, and you're going to hear about it.
Yeah, it does, and hopefully people take it to heart. Just not to put a kibosh on it or anything, but we always run into Colorado water law when it comes to reuse issues. You have a return flow that's kind of committed. You don't get to keep it just because you had it. So maybe we can take a look at that. I know we originally were going to water the golf course with some gray water, and it was a real challenge getting that water settled. Maybe it is now. That was just a long time ago.
Yeah, and I'll just quick footnote, City of Aspen holds some conditional water rights. It's would be reuse water from the Aspen Consolidated Sanitation District. Those are dedicated for specific uses, but we can certainly explore that. I think any uses, raw, potable, reuse, in the event of a fire would be used in these guys' tactics, whether they're taking water out of ponds or anything else. So nothing's really off the table.
Yeah. Very good. Is there anything else? This is a really very thorough discussion. Look forward to getting more people hooked up to Pitkin 911 or
Emergency.com.
The emergency numbers, and we'll think about how to get the word out better for our guests to all be prepared. And I'd like to thank the Aspen Police Department for sitting in the back and listening to all this. And you're lucky you didn't have to present, but we appreciate you being here, as well as the RAFTA reps. We do depend on people who come in on buses, potentially leaving on buses in these sort of circumstances. And so we understand that's a lot to ask from drivers and the personnel there. So thank you all. Is there anything else for the good of the order from anyone? Nope. All right, we can go home and have dinner. Thank you, Grassroots. Thank you, Daily News, for being here.